Welcome back to the swamp, everybody. We are once again diving deep into the woods to find some monsters and unexplainable things. These viewers sent in their stories that they claim to be true. As always, it is up to you whether you believe them or not. If you have a story that you would like to share, whether it be out in the woods or doing something completely different, be sure to submit it at swampdweller.net or the email you can find in the description down below. I would love to share your story with everyone here in the swamp. It's stories like yours that keep this channel going. Now, without any further ado, let's get into these creepy stories that'll make you think twice about running in those woods behind your house. This happened just 3 days ago. I was at my friend's house, who I will call Nick. His house is in the woods, with no fence separating his property from his neighbors. So we started off normal, playing some video games, knee hockey, and just messing around in his backyard. When we were playing soccer in his backyard, a rock came flying out of the woods and flew right by my friend's face. He didn't see it, so I told him, but of course, he didn't believe me at first. Now, we aren't the type to go hide away in his house when things like that happen, so we stayed outside and continued playing. Now, only a few minutes later, it happened again, except this time, it actually hit him. Now, he was angry, as he has a short temper, and started walking towards where he thought the rock came from. Now, it was getting pretty dark at this point, so we couldn't see too far into the woods. This is when another rock came out and hit me in the face. Not even an inch away from my eye. It hurt very badly. Neither of us saw where it came from, so we started moving more quickly into the woods, trying to find if it was kids messing with us. That is when we heard branches start breaking in front of us. We chased whoever or whatever that was, but stopped when Nick tripped on a rock. We went back into his house and started to watch a movie on Netflix downstairs when a rock about the size of a baseball came flying through his basement window. Once again, Nick ran outside, but this time brought his BB gun. He handed me a flashlight, and I knew what he wanted me to do. I turned on the light and pointed it at the woods. What we saw was a dark figure running into the woods. He opened fire, but most likely missed, and it was a BB gun, so I'm not sure how much it would have actually done. At this point, we still hadn't called the police because we were dumb teenagers. This time we sat in a bush next to his house, waiting for the man to come back. After what we thought was about 20 minutes of waiting, we saw someone come out, and I turned on the flashlight, lighting up a man who was dressed in baggy clothes and was easily over 6 feet tall. My friend shot at him twice and hit him both times. The man fell to the ground after wincing with pain, but immediately got up and sprinted away. This time we didn't chase, because we knew he wouldn't be coming back. At least we hoped so anyway. So me and two friends, John and Tyler, often go biking in the woods near Tyler's house. Nothing has happened to us until this experience though. We started out on a trail that led up to a stone tower. It was about 7 at night at this point, meaning it would be dark in about an hour since it was the summer. It took us about 30 minutes to get to the tower, and we got there at exactly 7:39, as that is the time I took the picture of the tower. We walked up the 2 flights of stairs and just chilled out for about 10 minutes at the top. But that was when Tyler said, "Huh, that's weird," pointing to a man dressed in black pants and a gray sweatshirt walking up the trail that we came upon. This wasn't anything that unusual, but it was odd the way he dressed and covered his face with his hood. At this point we weren't really scared, just a little bit weirded out. Until he walked up to the stairs of the tower door. We headed down the stairs to leave, but when we looked down, the man was now holding a kitchen knife. My friend John was the first one to react, me being the second. He immediately ran to the edge of the tower, which is about 40 feet tall, and jumped without hesitation. I followed and landed on my side, which made my whole right arm go numb. When we got up, we see Tyler coming out the front door, blood coming out of his nose. We don't ask any questions and immediately started down the trail, not slowing down the slightest bit. When we got to the bottom, we slowed down and asked Tyler what had happened. Instead of telling us, he screamed and pointed towards the trees. We both looked and there he was again, still holding the knife. He started sprinting towards us, but there was no way he could catch us on our bikes. We biked it all the way back to Tyler's, which took about 10 minutes. We all ended up with no broken bones or anything of that sort, and we still have no idea if this was a prank, a maniac, or something else. I used to work on horseback in the wilderness area finding missing people. I have some really strange stories from this time. It has caused me a lot of mental anguish because of it. You can learn from experiences and talking to other Native people about these things the natives speak of. I won't say the name as it is Native American belief that once you talk about these things they're attracted to you. There are good ones out there as well. I've seen it. They saved my life, but it's the ones that are bad that also are scary. That's why it's so hard writing this story. Okay, anyway, this is the first time I ever put this in a place for others to see. It's been long enough now that I can actually kind of talk about it. So, what I'm trying to say is that I'm trying to teach you about these things, but don't go looking for them. Please leave Bigfoot alone. He's not the bad one out there, but don't go pissing him off because he's just like you and me. We have emotions, we have feelings, and we have wants and desires. This is my first encounter with a Bigfoot, and well, something else. I refuse to say its name, but this thing you all know starts with a W. I'm out patrolling on an area, searching 12 hours after this child goes missing. Before I know it, I'm out there for a week or two looking. I'm packed with the necessary provisions. I have my trusty steeds and lever-action .308 along with a .357 on my hip. As I'm getting up on top of the ridge, I smelled a rotting smell. My horses start to spook. If you know horses, you know what I mean, and you instantly know something's not right. I turn around to head back down the trail and something was in front of me. It looks rotten. God, this thing terrified my normally even-keeled horses so badly, and I'm pretty sure that they are off feeding my terror as well. In an attempt to get away, I pulled on the reins so hard that the horse I was riding reared back and jumped the other way, pulling my pack horse with it. We twisted so fast I wasn't really ready for it. I got caught up in the stirrup and they dragged me for probably about a mile. I got knocked out, and after waking up in the middle of the night, I tried to gather my bearings to figure out where I was at. Knowing the horses are probably back down at the trailer 20 miles away, I start walking. I figured 20 miles I can do in 18 hours by myself. I got to go probably about 15 miles backwards towards the truck when I smell something. The smell is absolutely terrifying. It's almost sweet. I really can't describe it, but I figured that maybe someone was camping. I hoped I could get some provisions or something, but I can't find anybody, so I start back walking, and I keep getting the occasional scent of that sweet smell. I honestly can't figure it out. I'm really good at surviving in the wilderness with nothing. I can survive out here not being prepared. Still, this situation can kill you. I make sure to carry a pack on my back with survival tools, but this time they were on my horses. Another mile and the whole forest goes quiet. There's nothing. No sound. And I know when this happens there's something, but there is slightly a sweet scent in the air still, so I stopped and listened before walking a little further. That's when the new scent came into the air, a scent of rotting meat. At first, I thought there was just a dead animal. That's when my mind started turning and I remember that smell, and that what happened on the horses came flooding back to me. You know those times when you're in the forest and it feels like a dream? That's how I always felt until this day, and if it wasn't for that sweet smell, I would be so dead. So I hunkered down and I'm waiting. I left my rifle on the horse and my pistol busted. I'm listening now, and I can hear this thing walking. It's twisted and mangled look. It looks like something that you throw together for a Halloween gag. The thing just kept on getting closer, and I knew It was following down the path I was walking. It was following my blood trail. It was coming closer and closer until it stopped. I looked at it, and making sure that I wasn't making a sound. Then it puts its head up in the air and starts sniffing. It soon falls into a defensive stance, and I smelled the sweet scent, but now it was overpowering. A rock flies out of nowhere and hits my stalker. The scream it let out was so loud I about passed out. Then there were about 4 8-foot-tall beings hurling rocks the size of bowling balls at this thing. There was one of them behind me. I felt like it was a female presence. She knelt down beside me and put her massive dinner plate of a hand on my shoulder, and I knew at that point they were there to help me. At least I hope so anyway. She soon stands up, picks me up like a baby, and then she soon starts to run in the direction that my truck was. My stalker screamed one more time, and then the noises of the forest returned as I was being packed at least 5 miles back to the trailhead. I was set in front of my truck soon after. I looked at her, and then she hugged me for a brief second before vanishing into the forest. I'm walking to my truck, and my horses were in the trailer staring at me, saying in their own way, "Let's get out of here." I stare at them, about to say something, when a voice cried out for me, yelling that "We found him!" A forest ranger runs up to me asking where I've been. They found the girl 8 hours ago and were trying to get a hold of me. I just said that my horses ran back to the trailer, so I've been hiding out and just tried to make my way back. He just looked at me before saying he was glad I was safe. And that's my story with Bigfoots, and what I can only assume is that dreaded creature that I will never say its name. So I've been listening to these stories from your channel for a long time. I know a lot about S or W, and not saying their names. So basically, I have told my friend about them because he is interested in this kind of stuff. We live in Kentucky, in a small town called Bardwell. My friend Joseph was on a jog listening to music when he heard a chilling scream through his headphones. At the time, he had them blasting, so it'd be hard to hear anything. He said it was in the dark woods, about 700 yards away from him. Then, after that happens, about 2 days later, he and I go on a walk to the park. It was getting dark when he felt like we were being watched. He turned around and said I saw something peeking around the corner. I said, "Let's get the heck out of there," and then we left. A few days later, we were in the Lindsay room with his sister and her boyfriend when we heard something running outside. We saw nothing but big footprints. They were massive, though. Then, about a week later, I was sleeping, and sometime around 3 in the morning, I woke up to the smell of rotten flesh. That's when I started to freak out. I soon heard loud stomps, but it was running too fast to be a deer. I soon heard something growl, so I grabbed a machete and went under the blanket. Now I know what you're thinking. Who keeps a machete by their bedside? Well, when you live in the country, you might not ask that question anymore. Now listen, I'm 16 and not really scared of anything, but I'll tell you this, I nearly soiled myself that night. Since then, nothing else has happened. I've heard it messes with you and likes to creep you out and feed off your fear. I heard they like to knock on doors and windows, and it means someone cast a spell on you where it targets you. Every time we go to the Hucks and chill with some friends at 10 or 7, we hear a woman screaming and loud running noises, but I try not to think about it. So yeah, that's my story, and thank you for sharing it, Swamp Dweller. I have always been a traditional bow hunter and a collector of all things traditional archery. I always find a time to go hunting, mostly out of my home state of Maryland. I am a Catholic and I strongly believe in God and things to do with my faith. I am an advocate for all people of different races, religions, and backgrounds, seeing how I have Cherokee blood flowing through my veins. Now that you have some information about myself and my background, I will begin my story. It was somewhere in mid-October on a crisp afternoon, and I had decided to go hunt for a deer. Stemming how I was going out of state for a month, I needed to do something for my local food bank. I felt obliged to do this mostly because it was getting cold and I wanted to give the poor something to eat before the winter weather truly started to come in. I have a load of traditional bows that I collect and hunt with. It is my passion, and my walls are covered with traditional longbows and recurve bows. I have one bow, in particular, that is my favorite. It is also my most expensive bow and is worth about $1,500. It is my Black Widow Custom PLX longbow. I quickly strung it and got onto my old, beat-up trusty Kodak ATV. I'm not a complete redneck though, and I played YG's album, My Crazy Life, on my small stereo I hooked up to my phone. Do you ever just get that feeling that something as bad is gonna happen? That's the feeling I had on that ride into the woods. The night was slowly creeping up on me, and I had to hurry to get that deer. I had spotted a massive 9-porter on one of my trail cams I set up last week, and I headed to that spot where I thought it would be. I was on foot now, and with my prize bow on my back, I slowly made my way to one of my tree stands. When I stopped in my tracks, a man in his late 40s was sitting in my stand, staring down at me. Just to clarify, I'm about 6'1" and I look really intimidating in my hunting apparel. I'm truly just a gentle giant though, and I was glued to the spot just staring at the man's face. I noticed that he was unkempt and dirty looking, as if he had not had a decent meal in 2 years. I instantly felt bad as I realized this guy was in need of some serious TLC. I called to him to come down and I would help him. After all, I wanted to be kind and wasn't going to just throw him off my property. He slowly edged his way to the end of the stand with a big creepy grin on his face. Suddenly he jumped and I screamed. I thought he was going to break all the bones in his poor body, but as he landed he sprung up to his feet, and while grinning he ran toward me. I stood my ground and got him to the ground and pinned him down, being careful to not infer his already frail body. I called the cops who took like a good 8 minutes to get to my position, seeing how I was in the middle of the woods. They put the man in cuffs and I told them what happened. I signed some paperwork and that was that. I told the cops to be careful with him and to give him a shower and some food. They drove off and packed up to head home. As I drove back, I realized the crazy series of events that just unfolded. I felt, even more, a need to help the hungry from that point on, and I had been to Africa twice in 2019 to hunt and give out the meat to the less fortunate. I'm still scared of what would have happened if I didn't pin that guy, and I hope to God he is okay. Something is in the woods behind my house. I know you people might think it's crazy, but I know what I saw. Before I get to the sighting, I'm going to give a little more backstory of why I think what I saw was a creature. A few months ago, I and my sister were driving back from a friend's house late at night. When we got back to our house, we got out of our car and we were talking before heading inside. Suddenly, we heard what sounded like someone trying to mimic a monkey cry, like a drawn-out whoop. We froze. "What was that?" my sister asked. "I have no idea, but I'm not staying out here to find out." We both turned and ran inside, slamming and locking the door behind us. A few weeks later, we were sitting outside on the patio. Now, the way our house is set up is that there's a basement level with a door that leads outside to underneath our deck. To the left of the door, there's the patio that slowly became mine and my sister's smoking spot. So that night, we were both sitting outside while my sister smoked a cigarette. While talking, we heard something snap in the woods. We stopped and heard the whooping sound again, this time much closer. We didn't hesitate this time. My sister put her cigarette out and we booked it back inside. So, now that I've told you about what we heard, I'm going to tell you what I saw. It was a Wednesday, so I had the whole house to myself till about 8 o'clock. So I decided I would go to the gym when I was out of class for the day. After my workout, it was around 6:30. I drove home and parked in my parking spot. I then decided to smoke a bowl before I went inside. So, as I was about to light it, I felt like I was being watched. I had a feeling in my gut to not look up because I would regret what I would see. So, of course, what did I do? I looked up anyway, and what I saw confused me at first. 2 giant yellow lights were swaying slowly side to side. Then they stopped and blinked. I almost crapped myself, until it looked at me. We locked eyes for what felt like forever. They even blinked one more time before I watched them slowly disappear into the forest. I sat there in shock for a moment, before I ran inside and locked the door. I grabbed my shotgun and sat inside my room until my sister came home. I'm sorry to disappoint you if you were expecting a creepier ending like me saying I saw something outside my window while I heard tapping on my window. But I haven't, fortunately enough. It seems whatever it was, it has left us alone for now. If anyone could tell me what this thing was, it would be greatly appreciated. I've had some people tell me Bigfoot, but it wasn't very tall from what I could see. I'll send updates if anything else has happened. I have previously sent in a story about this particular animal. It has since happened again. I live in Cornwall, England. For context, back in the 70s and onward, members of the public and farmers have reported seeing large black cats. The UK has only one native quote-unquote big cat, called the Scottish wildcat, only slightly larger than a domestic cat. Anyway, a few weeks ago, I was out scouting an area for deer. I and my dad manage deer for farmers in our area. I was walking by a hedge scouting with my binoculars when I saw some brown fur sticking up from the long grass. I thought it was a fawn or a baby deer, but when I got closer I realized that it was an adult deer, but it was dead. The roe doe's rear was gone. The intestine, the haunch, all gone. With the skin still flapping, as if it were peeled back. This is common with big cat kills. They like to clean their meat. Knowing this, I looked at the deer's throat. There were 2 distinctive punctures. Dogs or foxes won't do this. They chase down the deer and pull it down, tearing at the haunches, and they don't leave out anything behind usually. After this realization, I looked again. The blood wasn't dry. It was bright red. The animal couldn't have been dead for more than a half an hour. Then I had another realization. The animal that killed this deer was still nearby. I gotta walk back to my car. It was at least a half an hour away. 5 minutes in, I began to have the feeling I'm being watched, or stalked. After walking through a woodland area, I stopped at the edge and simply waited. I had seen a roebuck and was studying it through my binoculars. You may wonder why I didn't get out of there straight away. I wasn't really scared as I've had encounter with these cats before and they never got close to me. Then, as I scanned the hedge, I saw a flash of black. The cat strode out into the field about 50 yards away, 3 feet tall, 7 foot long, long tail curling at the end, short face. It was definitely a cat. I watched it for what felt like ages. It was almost serene, and it had the distinctive scar of Charles. Yes, we named it. I saw it when it was a cub, with a cut probably from a fox. It probably scarred over. I had grown up with this cat and felt we were connected in some way. Anyway, enough of the sappiness. I still see Charles every so often. He has never attacked anyone that I know of, so this isn't really a scary story, but the feeling of being watched by anything is scary, even if it's your spirit animal. This story took place about a week ago and has me and my friends scared out of our minds. So I and my friend Toby went over to another one of my friend's house. His name is JD. We came over and hung out for a bit before Toby had to leave for work. No big deal to me or JD because we were planning to stay up all night anyway. It's worth mentioning that Toby left around 6:30 and gets off work around 12 in the morning. So I and JD were messing around while Toby was at work. You know, throwing the football outside, playing his Xbox, etc. It was getting pretty late when I asked JD if he had ever been in the woods during the night before. He He replied that he had many times and wasn't fazed by it at all. However, I'm not too fond of the darkness. I wouldn't say I'm scared of the dark, only scared of what's inside the dark. JD, in a mocking tone, asked me if I wanted to go out into the woods. I replied with an uncertain facial expression and was hesitant at first, but eventually, after being called a scaredy cat, I agreed to go out into the woods. We grabbed flashlights and handheld weapons, like an axe and a machete just for protection, and headed out towards the woods. Before we entered, JD reminded me of a story about when his cousin had seen a monster out in the woods that his family calls the Black Beast. To make a long story short, his cousin was walking out in the woods and saw a large black beast out in the woods and has been certain that he saw something out in the woods that day. JD also claimed to see a beast in broad daylight, and at first we were scared, but soon got over it. I have personally never seen the Black Beast, and to be honest, I don't really want to. As we got to the entrance of the woods, I decided it would be cool if I recorded everything on Snapchat just in case something went down. At least, that's the way I wanted to have it go. Unfortunately, my phone wasn't really working that well. JD was completely down for it, and we started on our trek through the woods. The path starts out wide and slims down as you're getting further. After about 300 feet of walking, you had to turn left onto the path and keep going down deeper into the woods. As we were walking along, JD was teasing me, saying things like, "Did you hear that?" trying to spook me out. I didn't really mind it, and kinda zoned him out because I could have sworn I heard something moving out beside us. I shushed him and turned my light off so we wouldn't give our position away, and we listened. The sound dissipated, so I turned my light back on and we continued walking. Paranoia, I told myself. JD continued to tease me but was interrupted when we heard branches snap behind us. JD immediately stopped and snapped his head in the direction of the sound, his joking attitude turning into a scared and nervous one. Now, the guy that was never scared of the woods that he had known all of his life was pale and on high alert. He asked me if I heard that, and I replied that I had, so we very slowly agreed to get out of there while we still could. We ran out and regrouped at his house and decided to go back there and investigate like curious teenagers are. I and JD were walking back through the woods and constantly stopping and listening because we were completely scared, to be honest. We were both so freaked out at what we had heard earlier. We got pretty far into the woods when JD stops me and tells me to listen. JD whispered that there was something directly to the right of us. This detail is important later in the story. We both stopped and sure enough, movement can be heard to the right. At this point, it was like 9 at night and it was pretty dark, so our paranoia was increasingly getting higher and higher with each sound that we heard. We disregarded the sounds and moved a little further down the path but heard movement again. This time a little too close for comfort. Another branch snapped loud and close. It was literally right beside us now. We were at a divergence on the path where it broke off into separate paths. Instead of trekking further, we both took the sounds as warning calls and ran all the way back to his garage. It was at this point that JD's sister came out of the woods, running to both of us laughing hysterically. We were frightened at first, but then highly pissed off because she had the audacity to do something like that. We asked her to explain everything about where she was and why she did everything. She did explain though. She entered the woods through a different route after she realized me and JD were out there all alone, and her goal was to scare us, and at first we believed she had done so successfully. At first, it seemed like nothing had been out there at all, and all the sounds were his sister. But then JD asked her if she was ever directly beside us. Never directly, she said. I and JD looked at one another with wide eyes. Then what was beside us? I asked him. He just looked and shook his head and said, I don't know. Very, very freaked out. We went inside his house and listened to the audio I had recorded from both times we had gone into the woods. There were various unexplainable noises, and one of them scared both of us so badly it made us reluctant to go back out there. In one recording, there was an unexplainable audible sound that for some reason JD heard and asked if I heard, but I said I didn't. However, the video did pick it up. I suggested that whatever was out there had to have been on the right side of us, or otherwise I would have heard it as well. For a bit of a side note, I was on the left side of the path and JD was on the right. JD agreed to this and he admitted that this was the first time he has been scared to go into the woods in a very long time. I was in shock and asked if he wanted to take Toby out there later when he got off work. He said yeah, and so fast forward to 2 o'clock in the morning, I, Toby, and JD are heading out to the woods. JD is on the far right, I am in the middle, and Toby is on the far left. I and JD both had queasy feelings about this third time going out there, especially me. I just had a gut feeling that something was going to happen. JD and Toby were the only two people with lights since I and JD agreed that I need to focus on recording more than holding a light. That was fine with me. We had started down the path when the wind started to pick up a bit. This gave the woods an unsettling vibe, but we continued to walk. JD stopped and I and Toby stopped as well. At first, I thought he heard or saw something. He turned around and said he wanted to walk to the woodline before heading back into the woods, and we didn't question it, so we walked to the woodline with nothing notable happening. We walked back into the woods and started down the path again. We stopped to listen and look around. It was silent. No birds, no crickets, nothing. Our guts were telling us that something wasn't right, but we continued moving onwards anyway. That was admittedly the worst thing we could have done. We turned left and continued walking when JD stopped us dead in our tracks. "What the heck was that?" he said. I turned to see where his light was, shining, and I swear to God I saw a pair of eyes dash across the path where it diverged, almost where we had stopped when we were in the woods earlier. JD said he had saw something dart across the path from the left side to the right side. We all started to slowly back away as we muttered and whispered to each other about what we had just seen. Toby and JD then turned around in lightning fast speed and started to haul butt away, leaving me in the dark with nothing but a light that shone around my feet and was hooked into my pocket. I wanted to stay and investigate until I realized I was being left behind. I turned around and started to get my way out of the woods, yelling at JD, and I thought that I had seen eyes as he shouted and he saw something run across the path. We were all spooked and I was taking my time out of the woods, merely just jogging out. For some reason, JD and Toby were in full-on sprint and I did not know what was going on at the time. They later told me why they were sprinting as fast as they were. I continued jogging and yelling at the two of them for leaving me in the darkness when the most heart-stopping sound hit my ears. Footsteps. Fast ones were closing in on me. At that moment, I screamed, "Oh crap," and my body filled with adrenaline as I went on into a full sprint. I'm a pretty fast guy, and I thank God that I outran whatever was behind me that night. The light that was hooked onto my short wasn't fastened too well and fell out as a result, and went rolling onto the ground as I sped by it, leaving it behind. I didn't stop running until I looked over and saw both JD and Toby standing next to each other. I started screaming at both of them that something is out there, and that I heard something running after me. I was so scared and confused about how something so large could be so fast and sneak up on you without even hearing anything. When I looked at them, they were both pale, especially JD. Only after we all had calmed down did JD tell me what he heard and what he saw. He said that when he turned around after he screamed, he saw something running back into the brush behind me, not giving chase just 20 feet behind me. Which seems like a lot when a huge, dark, ominous figure is running after you. In the heart of the woods at 2 o'clock in the morning, 20 feet feels like 20 inches. He said it was a large, dark figure about 7 feet tall if he had to guess. Which, for a reference, I'm the tallest one out there. I was about 5'10" at the time. He couldn't make out details of its face or anything like that. The scary thing is it didn't make a sound. It was silent. I asked him why they turned around and ran, and he said that he and Toby had heard running footsteps before I ever did. I was freaked out. I couldn't believe that he had told me this, and I was kinda mad that they had left me behind. We all went back to his house and told his mom and sister everything. His sister doubted us while his mom believed that we had both saw and heard something. Eventually, we were all tired and despite the fright, all went to sleep. That's my story of a creepy night out in the woods. Thanks for listening to these creepy, allegedly true stories while exploring in the woods. As always, it is up to you to believe whether these stories are true or not. The people who sent them in claim them to be, so please be respectful in the comments down below. If you enjoyed these stories, please hit that like button. The more likes this video gets, the more YouTube shares it with fresh new eyes. If you're new to the swamp, want to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications to never miss a new video. I upload them almost every single day, on all things natural and supernatural. If you have a story you would like to share in a future video, whether it be about being in the woods or something completely different, be sure to submit it at swampdweller.net or the email you can find in the description down below. I would love to share your story with everyone here in the swamp. It's stories like yours that keep this channel going. As always, very much appreciate all of your support. We're getting really close to 130,000 swamp dwellers. If you haven't yet, check out some of the new merch that you can find linked down below. I have a lot of cool shirts and jackets and mugs and all kinds of stuff based off of the cryptids and monsters that we read about in these stories. I'll see you guys soon with another creepy video.